On the last episode of Menace, the Ken story. It was November, and we had just come back to school from Thanksgiving break. I hadn't seen Shalonda for a couple of days because we were out of school, but we had been talking on the phone at night. I was so glad to see her when we got back. We had a good day, and I walked her to a bus. Hot Boy picked me up from school, and we made our runs. It was around 6:30, and we decided to park the car and smoke. And wouldn't you know it, we got rolled on. The police pulled up. And because the car obviously smelled like weed, they had probable cause to search us and the car. Me and Hot Boy both had individual bags of weed on us, which could have amounted to intent to distribute. But because we had dropped most of it off, we told them that it was just for our personal use. That didn't matter though. Weed was still illegal at the time, and we were parked in a public playground parking lot. So of course, we got locked up. They put us in the back of the police car together. Hot Boy leaned over and whispered in my ear, "We just gotta take it. Keep your mouth shut." And that's what I did. You would have thought we were some kingpins instead of two 16 and 18-year-old kids. They were grilling us hard, asking where we got the weed. We stuck to the personal use story, and they really couldn't prove anything different. They slapped us with possession charges. Hot Boy knew better than to call Rob because he didn't want anything leading back to him, so he called Tommy, saying he was our uncle. Before I knew it, Ma was bonding both of us out. Rob had contacted her and given her the money to come and get us. I didn't tell Shalonda about the arrest. I couldn't. She didn't know anything about my life outside of her, and I didn't want that to be the introduction. They gave me a court date in January, and I decided to let it play out. Rob said they'd probably give both of us a slap on the wrist because it was the first offense for both of us. I felt like that's how it was going to play out too, so I didn't sweat it. I lived every day like nothing was going on. But I got a rude awakening when I went to court. It was my first time getting into any real legal trouble, but they came in with my school records and everything. They talked about my history of suspensions and how I had been known to skip school, and how I had beat up a student and the vice principal. By the time they laid it all out, they made it look like I was an escalating menace. Actually, that's what they said. The prosecutor said, "This boy is an escalating menace. He's going to be a serious problem if he doesn't face some consequences for his actions." I wasn't ready for that. My court-appointed lawyer wasn't ready for that either. But the judge agreed. He gave me 6 months in a juvenile facility. I was crushed. I really didn't think the judge would give me any time. That said, I hadn't gotten anything in order. I hadn't thought about what was going to happen to Ma with me being gone. And I hadn't had the chance to talk to Shalonda about any of it. She didn't even know I had gotten into trouble at all. But there was nothing I could do about it. I went straight to the juvenile facility from court. Hot Boy went home. They basically gave him a slap on the wrist. Chapter 11, Sleep with One Eye Open. Narrated by Shandora Warren. Music by Epidemic Sound. Me and Omar took a minute to catch up after dinner. It turned out that he had been picked up on a possession charge too. Omar was given the same 6 months that I got, but he only had 2 days left by the time I got there. Just my luck. I found somebody that I knew, and he'd only be there for another 2 days. "Don't worry about it," said Omar. "All the dudes that were at that table are cool. You'll be all right with any of them." I knew I'd be all right either way. I was pretty much a loner, but still. There was one advantage to the fact that Omar would be getting out soon. I needed something from him. I asked, "Let me ask you a question. You going back to school when you get out?" Omar told me that he was definitely going back to school. He had taken classes while he was on the inside, so he'd basically be on track once he was released. "I need a favor," I said. I gave Omar a short rundown of the Shalonda situation. I didn't tell him I wasn't having sex with her. I couldn't. I told him that I didn't think I'd get locked up, so I hadn't had a chance to talk to her about everything. Her parents are strict, so I can't exactly just call there, I said. I asked Omar if he'd be willing to find Shalonda and give her a letter when he went back to school. He said that he would. I went back to my room and wrote the letter. It said, "Shalonda, I wish I didn't have to write this letter, but things didn't go the way I thought they would. I'm gonna be gone for a little while. I got into some trouble and they gave me 6 months. There are a lot of things that I should have told you, but I'm not gonna say them in a letter. You deserve more than that. I'll make it up to you when I get out, if you let me. I'm sorry. Ken." I gave the letter to Omar, then went to take a shower. We all had to be ready for bed by 8 o'clock. This is gonna take some getting used to, I thought. I didn't sleep at all that first night. The bed felt like I was sleeping on a bunch of river rocks. On top of that, Sebastian snored and talked in his sleep all night. This is going to be a long 6 months, I thought. And then we had to be up by 4 o'clock, a.m. Everything there was extremely structured. We woke up at 4, ate breakfast at 6, classes started at 8, we had lunch at 11, we ate dinner at 5, we went to sleep at 8. Everything in between had a time and place too, from activities to phone calls to counseling sessions. We wore uniforms anytime we were outside of the housing unit. Our shirts had to be neatly tucked inside. The televisions were set to only show select programs. None of them contained any violence or hard cursing. We didn't have school on the weekends, and we could have visitors between the hours of 9 and 5, but only for 2 hours at a time. This is the absolute worst. I am never getting locked up again, I said. I can tell you now, that was the biggest lie I ever told. Omar got released 2 days later. His roomie came and brought me a piece of paper after he left. "This yours?" he asked. I opened it and realized that it was the letter I had written to Shalonda. That nigga ain't even take it with him. Man, I was hot. Ma came to visit the first weekend I was there. She seemed to be in somewhat good spirits, all things considered. She told me that she had just gotten another job. Rob had come by and left some money with her, and that would be enough to hold her over until she got paid. Knowing that Rob cared enough to look out made me feel better. I didn't expect him to do it for the whole 6 months, but I was grateful that he did anything at all. It turned out that he actually did look out the entire time. We'll get back to that though. For the moment, I was relieved that Ma seemed to be doing okay, but those 2 hours went by extremely quickly. For the first time in my life, I missed my mama. I hadn't ever had to miss her before. I went back to my room, sad and on the brink of tears. I tried to hold it in, but it was a lost cause. I sat on my bed and began to cry. Sebastian came into our room. "What you crying for?" he asked. I just shook my head. I couldn't stop crying long enough to tell him. Sebastian sat beside me and placed his hand on my back. He said, "If you're going to do this every time, you need to tell her to stop coming. It's just going to get harder." I don't know. For some reason, I got mad. I jumped up and punched Sebastian. He fell into the floor. When he popped up, he was ready to go. He hit me and I fell backwards into the bed. We fought hard. Somehow, Sebastian got on top and was getting the better of me. Before I knew it, he had grabbed a pillow and held it over my face. That nigga was trying to smother me. He didn't though, obviously. I felt like I was about to pass out. Sebastian removed the pillow, leaving me gasping for air. He walked towards the door and said, "If your mama tell your mama to stop coming if it's gonna mess with you. And if the counselor asks, you don't know what happened to your eye. If we get caught fighting, we're gonna get more time." He walked out just like he walked in, calmly. How was I supposed to sleep at night, knowing that nigga could just smother me? Calmly. I got up and looked into the mirror. My eye had already begun to swell. Those are some long and hard months. I spent most of the time being angry. I thought a lot about the injustice of it all. Me and Hot Boy were in the same place at the same time, yet he managed to go home while I ended up in juvie. The difference in how they portrayed us was insane. but we really weren't so different. Both of us had been through some things and had made some bad decisions. But in the end, I was the menace. I was the one who couldn't be trusted to go home and get it together. I was also mad that Omar hadn't given my letter to Shalonda. That nigga was probably trying to replace me. I pictured him walking with her down the halls at school and everything. The only thing that made me feel a little bit better was the fact that she couldn't come outside. I knew he wasn't having sex with her, but in my mind, he was calling her at 10 o'clock and talking to her until she went to sleep. The very idea of that ticked me off every single time I thought about it. Ma came to visit every Saturday, and I was relieved that she seemed to be doing well. I stopped crying after the third visit, but me and Sebastian kept butting heads. There's something about being in close quarters with someone who has a complete and utter disregard for other people and their property. That was Sebastian. We had room inspections every Friday. If we failed inspections, we couldn't have our weekend visits. Sebastian didn't care because Sebastian didn't have visitors. He told his family not to come. So because the consequences didn't apply to him, Sebastian wouldn't help me clean the room. Not only would he not help me clean, but he was nasty. Sebastian threw trash into the floor, peed around the toilet, you name it. And knowing that I wouldn't get my visit if the room wasn't clean, I cleaned it every Friday morning. And every Friday afternoon, me and Sebastian would fight. He didn't care what he did. If I left a pencil on the desk, Sebastian was going to steal it. Not only was he going to steal it, but I also wondered if he was going to stab me in the neck with it when I went to sleep. And because of that, I slept with one eye open every night. I learned very quickly about the natural order of things. There was no point in complaining or trying to get help. There was no help. No one was going to take Sebastian and put him somewhere else. No one was going to make him clean or force him to stop stealing. I had to do what I had to do to stay in compliance. But once I checked the boxes, I was going to fight him. Every single time. And when we were questioned, we kept our mouths shut. What bruise? I don't know what you're talking about. What black eye? I ain't getting a fight with nobody. If the guards or counselors didn't see it, it didn't happen. We managed to make it through most of my sentence that way. But with less than 1 month left, Sebastian forced my hand. I was asleep, minding my business. I woke up in the middle of the night and caught this dude standing over me. He was just standing there, looking crazy. In my mind, that was the night that Sebastian was going to stab me with one of the pencils he had stolen. I wasn't going to give him a chance to get the jump on me. I jumped on Sebastian and slammed his head into the toilet sink combo that was in our room. We started fighting from there. It just so happened that one of the guards was doing rounds and heard the commotion. It was the middle of the night and too quiet for the fight to be disguised by the normal goings-on of the building. The guards broke it up, and we couldn't deny that a fight had taken place. Sebastian said that he had only gotten up to pee and was surprised when I attacked him for no reason. But I know what I know. That nigga was standing over me, and it ain't no telling what he was about to do. I had to get him before he got me. Sebastian got relocated to another room. Finally. Apparently, I posed a risk to his safety. After that nigga tried to smother me with a pillow, I posed a risk to his safety. Either way, that's what it looked like. And for that, another 2 weeks was added to my sentence. So, instead of being released in July, I was released in mid-August. Man, that was one of the best days of my life. When I walked out of that gate at 5 o'clock and saw Ma, it was like seeing a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. All I wanted was a hot shower and something good to eat. The water in juvie was always cold, and the food was always terrible. Ma cooked one of my favorite food combinations: fried chicken wings, homemade macaroni and cheese, and peas. I ate, took a hot shower, then took a nap on my bed that didn't feel like river rocks. Something jolted me out of my sleep around 8 o'clock. I jumped up, prepared to fight. For a second, I forgot that I wasn't in juvie. When my eyes adjusted, I realized that Hot Boy was in my room. He was standing against my dresser. He laughed before addressing me. He said, "You alright? You look like you had a war flashback or something." All I could do was laugh. In my mind, he was Sebastian, and he was about to get the business. "Come on," said Hot Boy. "Rob sent me. You got some catching up to do." We went to Rob's spot and I felt like a celebrity. He had put together a little gathering for my homecoming. Rob pulled me aside and told me he was proud of me for keeping my mouth shut, but we'd have to have a conversation about being smart. According to Rob, we never should have put ourselves in a position of smoking out in the open. I already knew what that meant. Anything that we did could possibly lead back to Rob, and he wasn't cool with that. Hot Boy had already told me that he got paused as a punishment. Basically, he'd have to remain a weed boy a little longer than he would have had to otherwise. That would likely be my punishment too. But it was cool. After doing those 7 months in juvie, I was happy to just be getting back on track. And the party, it was live. Pick your poison and it was there. From alcohol to weed to hard drugs to women. I wasn't a drinker. I had turned 17 1 month earlier, and I wasn't even old enough to drink. The legal age in Virginia was 21. Well, I wasn't old enough to smoke either, so I guess that wasn't it. I hadn't really been exposed to alcohol in the way that I had been exposed to weed. But that night, it was a celebration, so I drank. And drank. And drank. And that was the night that I found out that I couldn't really drink. I woke up feeling like I got run over by a truck the next morning. I also woke up thinking about Shalonda. The excitement of being home was over, and I had to think about how I was going to get back to her. It had been 7 months, and I couldn't just assume that everything was the same. Knowing that her parents were strict, I didn't want to take the chance of calling her house, even after 10 o'clock. If she wasn't expecting me to call, maybe someone else would answer the phone. I didn't want her to get in trouble. I didn't know where she lived. I didn't even know anyone who knew where she lived. This was before cell phones and such. We had to rely on completely different things than people do today. I understood that there was really only one thing that I could do. I had to go back to school. I had to find her. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to purchase books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon in ebook, paperback, and some in hardback formats. Please like and follow this podcast, and feel free to share it with family, friends, and frenemies, because all relationships matter, even the toxic ones. Thanks so much for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Shine, little girl.